Hello, Miata people of the internet. Keith Tanner here again from Flyin Miata. I'm giving you another Facebook Live from my home base here in Colorado. Flyin Miata is, at the moment, shut down. Our warehouse is shut down for obvious reasons, so we're doing this from home. I'm running solo. I apologize in advance for any shaky cam you might get, or me forgetting my lines, or just kind of getting lost. That's the price you pay. Little update about the whole virus situation. At the moment, our warehouse is currently closed to make sure that our shipping employees stay safe. We are looking at ways that we can hopefully reopen that. We're hoping to do it on Monday. We don't know at this point. I don't know for sure yet, but we're going to give it a try. Watch our website for information on that. Also, our mailing list. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you a tour of this guy. This is the Targa Miata. This is possibly one of the better known Miatas out there. It's a car that I've owned, 14 years, roughly, by this point. And I've been working on it longer than that. I started building this car before I had the tub. And what I'm going to do today is give you a tour of the car, not just as it sits now, but how it got to be where it is. Because it's honestly, if you were building this car from scratch, it's kind of an odd specification by this point. And that's simply a reflection of its history. It's got quite a long history of doing all sorts of very interesting things. I will do my best to answer all your questions. Please hit me up with any questions or comments. As I said, I am flying solo on this. I'll try to catch them all, but I do have some that were placed beforehand, and I'll try to address all of those. I'm going to start off by giving you a history of the car, so you know where it came from, and then I'll go through the current specification, how it's set up right now, and then we'll talk about some of the questions people have, you know, how it deals with the handling, what it's like to drive, that kind of thing. So I'll get my ugly face out of the camera, start walking the camera around, and we'll see what we can see. Okay, well, a Targa Miata is a 1994 R package. It's actually the third chassis that I used to build this particular car. The first two turned out to have too much damage. When I tore them down, I wasn't happy with how they worked. And the plan was to build a car for the Targa Newfoundland, which, if you may or may not know, is a week-long race through the streets of Newfoundland, Canada. The event has changed quite a bit over the years. The first one I was planning on running was in 2007. At that point, it was had some very long stages and very rough stages, and that influenced the way we built the car. So the car itself, the tub, was owned by my coworker Jeremy Ferber. He bought it from the original owner, I believe. It was a cream puff at that point. He turbocharged it, autocrossed it all over Southern California, had a really good time with it, and then when it turned over 200,000 miles, he pulled the engine out and planned to do a rotary swap. Well, he got as far as taking out all the parts that weren't a rotary, stripped it right down to the tub and seam welded it, and then lost access to the garage. So he had to get rid of the tub in a hurry. I needed a tub, and so I ended up with the Targa Miata. So there you go. That's a 200,000 mile R package. Took the car home, put it up on jack stands in my new garage, and started building. This car was built when we had our salvage operation running. There are something like 11 different colors of paint underneath that livery. This car was basically conjured out of nowhere. There weren't many parts left in the original build, so it got modified right from the start. The original build was a high compression 2-liter. It was built for the class, the modern class in Targa Newfoundland, which has a fairly restrictive rule set. You're allowed to make certain modifications to it. I forget exactly what the class was, but basically I had to stick with an original engine block. I had to stick with mostly an original drivetrain, limited number of things I could do with wheels and tires, that sort of stuff. So effectively at that point it was written to be as comment, turn on the car, let us hear the car. I'll get there, you'll get to hear it. It makes lots of noise. Anyway, the car was built to be an optimized 4-cylinder. It was built to be as light as possible, so there's a lot of attention in the original build spent on weight savings. And I'll walk through some of that in a bit. The high compression 2-liter was a lot of fun. The car did well in the Targa, given that it was here we go up the back corner. Given that it was a novice team, we won our class. It wasn't a big class, but we won our class that year. And then the car was basically used for fun time on the track for a while. 2011, we decided to go back to Targa Newfoundland, but this time we took it a little more seriously and decided to go for the open class victory. Open class, as you can imagine from the name, far more open. You can do a lot more, and that's when the car got its V8 transplant. It was originally built with a 5.3 liter L33 with LS6 heads and a special cam from V8 Roadsters, a bunch of stuff like that. The car ran in the open class with that. It led the open class for 4 days until the factory main relay failed on at the end of day 4. That dropped us back by about 5 minutes, and we finished less than 5 minutes behind the leaders. So, had it been for that factory main relay, we probably would have taken the win. We were quite a way in advance by that point, but that's why you race, isn't it? Stuff like that happens. And Flyin Miata does sell replacement main relays if you find yourself in a situation where you are racing with a 20-year-old main relay and maybe you shouldn't be. So after the Targa, a couple years later, I decided the little 5.3 just wasn't enough, and I dropped in a 6.2 LS3. It's basically the LS376 525 crate engine, rated for 525 at the crankshaft. It's a stock engine, a stock LS3 with a different camshaft, and that is the fundamental spec it's had ever since in terms of powertrain. I'll go through a full spec of it in a bit, but once the Targa was over, it got turned into an R&D development car for Flyin Miata. It's always worked like that. This car has taught me quite a bit of what I know about handling, about suspension setup. It's one of the reasons why I emphasize travel over so much else, because of what I've learned on this thing. And over the last 7 or 8 years, that's what this car has been. It has been a development platform for me to try crazy experiments on, for me to test different suspension on, for me to see just what will break if you do this to something. It's very good at breaking things. And these days, it's actually in street car mode. It's back. If it was going to run Targa Newfoundland right now, it would actually probably look a lot like this. It's got enough ride height to survive. It's got some of its skid plates in place, not all of them. But yeah, it's basically in street car mode. So it's not quite in the full crazy mode that you might see in some videos and some pictures. It's a little bit of everything. Let's just call this Targa mode right now. So let's show the one thing everyone wants to see. We'll get to the thing everyone wants to hear. We have a question if the Targa package will ever come back for the NC. That is dependent on the supercharger availability. The Targa package for the NC is the drivetrain package that this car's sister car had in 2011. Until we get that supercharger back, that unfortunately is not an option. But for the time being, let's just pay attention to this one. So there you go. This is a 6.2 liter LS3. All stock except for the addition of a different camshaft, one that's offered by GM. It's rated for 525 at the crank. That's a little on the optimistic side. This particular car makes 466 horsepower and 430 something foot-pounds of torque. It has 300 foot-pounds of torque at 1700 RPM. It has at least 400 foot-pounds of torque from 21 to redline. It is a beast of an engine. And the nice thing is that in a car like a Miata, this is about a 2,400 pound car, it's just idling. It's not working hard at all. So everything is strong. It's completely overbuilt for what it's doing. Take a little tour of the engine bay. You can see that I have made some changes to the factory wiring. I got rid of that main relay, that problematic thing that cost us the win. There's a secondary fuse box that runs all the V8 stuff. It's got one of our radiators designed specifically for Miatas with V8 engines. That's an LS7 intake. This was the first car we adapted it on. I went in on a weekend, literally banged on the car with a hammer until I made it work, and then we came up with a slightly slicker solution to do it for customers. It also has, this is off one of the, I think the 1LE Camaro. It's an oil separator that dumps the extracted oil back into the valve cover. We found that the 525s do have a tendency to throw a little oil into the intake under hard track use. So that's there to take care of that problem. The oil pan is the Flyin Miata oil pan with oil baffling. It has been rock solid in terms of oil consumption and oil pressure, so it hasn't suffered the sort of failure that you often see with V8 cars on track or with LS3s on track and other applications. The tow hook is missing. This is true. I took it off because I needed to borrow it for another car, but normally there's a tow hook in there. I'll get to the interior in a minute. Right now the car is running 6-piston wheelwood brakes up front, 4 pistons in the rear. This is the Flyin Miata Big Mama Jama brake kit. It runs great big ducts. It's got 3-inch ducting on it. Keeping the brakes cool, especially at a track like High Plains Raceway, is a problem for a car like this. It has no problems at Laguna Seca, but High Plains with the very long straights and the high altitude, the low ambient pressure is a problem. So the wheels right now are the 15x9s. It's what I run almost all the time. They're running, I think, 245 Hankooks. Oh, they're RC1s right now. I've forgotten what I've got in the car. I've got multiple sets of wheels and tires for this thing. On track, it runs a 225 Toyo RR most of the time. Seems to work. We'll talk about that in a bit. We're getting more requests for noise, so let me put this down and get you guys some noise. Everyone loves noise. Sorry about the finger there. Bone stock, I tell you. Probably should put it in neutral first, but this is going to be a very entertaining video. Yes. There we go. I'm not going to run that too long or I'm going to gas myself out of here. But the car does not currently run catalytic converters. It did when it was racing. They're off right now because of the ground clearance problems they caused when I was running at very low heights. But there you go. I will give you the tour of the interior, and we'll fire it up again later, just because everyone does love a very, very noisy V8 Miata. And this is a very, very noisy V8 Miata. My impression when I was running this thing in the Targa, for the first time I got on the stage, was that it was propelled mostly by noise, more by noise than anything else. It's almost physical. So much fun. So, I'm making this up as I go. Here's a touch a lot of people don't know. Adam from Revlometer noticed this when he was here. This is one of Flyin Miata's. These are Flyin Miata's carbon fiber headlight covers. One of the things I did with the Martini livery, there we go, I left the exposed weave in the headlight covers, so you can tell it's there. It's kind of a subtle touch, but it's fun. There we go, carbon fiber. Yeah, baby. But the Martini livery itself, the Targa Newfoundland, especially in 2011 or 28, was aimed at vintage cars. And since I was starting from scratch with the design for this thing, I said, you know, I'm going to need to come up with a livery that's going to be appropriate. And I decided to do Martini because I love the way it looks. And I actually painted it at home. This is not vinyl. This is paint. Shot in my own garage. I'm not very good at painting cars, which is why it's good it's a race car. But there is, you can see right there, you can hear it too, that those are actual layers of paint. Let me tell you, I found out when I started to stripe out, or I started to mask the light colored stripes, I realized why nobody does Martini livery. It is a pain in the butt to paint, let me tell you. But those colors are actually the same Martini colors used by the Lancia shop, the Lancia rally cars back in the 80s. I got in touch with a restoration shop in Finland, mat.fi, great website. Sent them an email, asked them, and they got the original colors from the shop that painted the Lancias in Italy. So this is off an Opel GT. It's actually an orange color, but of course that shows up better in shows up red on camera. This is off a Mercedes, and this is, I believe, also a Mercedes color. Anyhow, I had to do a bit of hunting around to get the right colors, but this is legit Martini paint, and like I said, it's paint. The stickers on the side, this is how it ran Targa Newfoundland in 2011. With a couple of exceptions, the Fox sticker is new. But 2011 was actually crowd supported. Before Kickstarter really took off, we knew we weren't going to be able to go back to the Targa unless we had some fan support. And so we opened it up for fan support. These are the biggest sponsors. We had a couple of clubs really step up. Alvin Rees is a fellow who's built his own V8 Miata, and he was the biggest, one of the biggest personal supporters. Jeff Pangris in there, he also has a V8 Miata himself. But those are the people who made it possible for us to build this car and go back to Targa Newfoundland in 2011. So that's the exterior. You can get an idea of what's going on here. martini stripes, LS3. The rear window, because I was so concerned about weight when I first built the car, is Lexan. It's 1/8 inch. It's holding up pretty well. I just basically got a piece of Lexan, made a template out of cardboard, cut it out, and riveted it on. Very complicated. The hood, or both the hood and the trunk are pinned on. Again, this is weight savings. If I take this off, you'll see that there's absolutely no skin underneath the trunk. It is just a shell. Very lightweight and flimsy. The rear bumper, not sure if you're going to be able to see this, is again just a skin. There's nothing underneath it but exhaust. The wires are off a science experiment I did involving active aero. And I'm going to do another video on that later. In a couple of weeks, we'll do a video talking about the active aero experiments with this thing, which were kind of fun. Not necessarily the most conclusive in the world, but fun. And I think that's about all I got on the outside. You know what I'm going to do? To give you a good tour of the inside, I will take the lid off. Oh, here's one other thing. Again, it was a rally car. It was built as a rally car. This skid plate went underneath the engine. And you can see it has been used. There's skid plates all over the bottom of this car. There's one underneath the rear diff. There's a couple on the frame rails. There's that one there. And they all have skid marks all over them because, well, when you're rallying, sometimes you have to make the decision, is this the one where I hurt the car on? Do I beat it up a little bit more? Do I take the hits to the skid plates? And sometimes you do. I also lost a wheel at Laguna Seca a few years back, right in the middle of turn 9. So, sorry. And normally that would have been a problem. But in this case, the car landed on its skid plates and rode it all out. It didn't destroy the diff, it didn't rip anything up. Drove over its own wheel, that caused some problems, but generally speaking, the car survived well. So I'll get the cover off, get the top off so you can see what it looks like inside. In case you're wondering, this is how you take a hardtop off by yourself on a Miata. This one's a little sticky. Come on. Hasn't been off in a couple of years. This top doesn't come off very often. Come on. You know what? Maybe we won't take the hardtop off. Interesting. Well, so much for that plan. We'll just go inside. I haven't taken the top off in years, but that is a factory hardtop. They don't weigh that much, and this was not built with unlimited funds. One interesting thing about this car, because it was built as a rally car, and there is real weather in Newfoundland, this thing is weather tight. It's got a lot of weird little solutions that you wouldn't see on a track car. You know, it's got windshield wipers, it's got full power, it's got power windows, because they're easier to deal with when you're in a cage. Although the wiring's a little simplified. That's the switch for the power steering, or for the power windows. And I don't have a light in here. Let's see what I can do. And here's the cockpit. The cage design is a leftover from what Targa Newfoundland required in 2008 and then required again in 2010 or 11. It's a little bit odd. The speedometer doesn't work since the V8 conversion. I never bothered to convert it because the car has a rally computer. It runs a TrackMate when it's on track. Not today though. The center console is wrapped in coolant, trying to keep the temperatures under control on this thing because it does get kind of warm in there when you're working hard on the track. Let's go around the other side. I'm sorry I couldn't take the top off. It looks like one of the Frankenstein bolts. Some of that has shifted over the years, and I haven't taken it off in years. So, this is the co-pilot's cockpit. That is a Caralba Sea Giant rally computer. Fantastic piece of kit. That gives Janelle, my co-driver, gives her information on exactly where we are to, I think, within a meter. It's really, really close tolerance on it. Exactly how long how long we've been running, what our average speed is. She can pull up a lot of information such as fuel. Go and focus, little guy. It's got a couple of different countdowns. This allows us to be on time to make sure that we're going as fast as we have to go. Gives us all the information we need to make sure that she can call the various turns on time. Fantastic piece of kit. There's also a small display that can be put over in place of the TrackMate on the driver's side to give me current information as well, such as say average speed, time elapsed, or speed, whatever. Switch plate. That's a DIY plate. I just hammered that out of a piece of aluminum. Arm lasers puts the headlights up, of course. Eject. Not many people have had the nerve to actually try that, but it's got an eject switch. This is also for the passenger. This was actually sent to me by a fan. I apologize, I'm blanking on the name right now, but if you go to targamiata.com, you'll see who it was. That is a Sparco foot plate so that the navigator can wedge herself into place nicely. These nets allow us to carry stuff with us, route books or snacks, whatever you might want. Right now it's full of wires for the camera. And a hero card. We gave these out. Oops. Gave these out during the Targa Newfoundland. Everyone loves hero cards. On here we've got a master cutoff switch. There's brake bias adjusting. And here's kind of a fun touch. Because this car was built out of salvage cars, there are bolts in the Miata that are painted body color, just because, you know, they're under hood or something like that. And I scavenged as many of those as I could, and I used them all over the car just for fun. There's red bolts and blue bolts and yellow bolts all over the car simply because it's just a goofy kind of fun thing to do. And actually, Joseph Acuna is asking about cup holders, so I will show you what it really has. Unbottles. Check it out. Those are actual camelbacks without the little backpack strapped to the back deck. And both the driver and the passenger, well, driver and co-driver, have a water feed tube right on the right at your chest on the, what do you call that, on the harnesses. So the days on the Targa Newfoundland are 13 hours long, and you got to stay hydrated. So there's nothing better than being able to take a sip of water when you need it. And I've got to say, it comes in really handy when you're on the track as well. Makes a big difference when you're getting to the end of the day if you keep drinking water, keep yourself hydrated. When we're in Targa mode and rally mode, there's also a plug-in here for the intercom. I'll show you the intercom in a minute. Fire extinguisher down here. Normally in rally mode, the co-driver would also have, where the wheel is, would also have some safety triangles. There's a first aid kit carried inside the car, a bunch of tools carried inside the car. Car even holds a full-size spare because if you need a spare tire, you need a spare tire. So that's the bulk of the specifications. Seats are a Sparco FX1 Pro. Took a lot of work to get those to fit. These are, the original pads were way too thick, so these were replaced with Backsaver foam, a high density memory foam. Made a big difference. Before this, it was about comfortable for about half an hour. After that foam, it was comfortable for 13 hours at a stretch, and I sat lower. So memory foam in place of factory pads. There's your hot tip for the day. Mark is asking about there being an air duct under the dash. There is. This, you can't see it very well. I apologize for the light. I thought if I took the roof off, you'd be able to see. This is actually the defroster unit. There's a bilge pump. There's an air pump fan down underneath the passenger's footrest. It normally would blow through the ducts in the dashboard and underneath the windshield. Right now in track mode, I've got it set up to cool the driver down because, let me tell you, it gets hot in here after a long day on track. So yes, there is an air duct aimed at the driver. Just because. You know what? Let's fire it up again. Just because everyone loves the noise. It's been too long since we made some V8 noise, so let's do that for a second. Whoop. Okay. This is for street use. I take it out for driving on the track. For the new watchers. There we go. No active exhaust on this thing. This is full on noise. I've had a couple of questions about the suspension on the car. This has been a suspension R&D platform for a long time. Originally we developed the AFCO suspension that we sold for a long time on this car. It was very compliant, very good for the Targa Newfoundland stuff. Fox Racing approached us a few years later, wanted to work together, so we started working with Fox Racing, and this is running a Fox Racing suspension. This is one of the cars that has always been used as a test platform with Fox Racing, because we know that if it can make this car hook up and work well, it'll work well on lower powered cars as well. Front springs are 750, rear springs, hard to say what they might be right now, they change around. Rear springs might be a 550, I think that is the case, or 500 at the moment. Probably 550 actually. I adjust that sort of stuff all the time. I've always run a lot of rear spring in this car. It's always liked it a lot more, so we're constantly evaluating that sort of thing. We may see some changes in some of the spec of the various kits we offer because of that. Sway bar's got a Flyin Miata sway bar in the front. It's got no sway bar in the rear. Trying to get one of these things to hook up. You generally don't run one. It runs the Super Miata alignment effectively. A lot of front camber, not as much in the rear, because it's always worked out well for this car to get it to turn. Skid plates all over the place. Factory control arms, except for the rear. The rear upper is one of the adjustable ones from Paco Motorsport, so I can adjust the camber independently without having to mess around with the alignment cams. So the actual drivetrain, we talked about the LS3. It's an LS3 with an ASA cam, they call it, rated for 525. Makes 466 at the wheels. Clutch is off an LS7. It's basically an LS7 factory clutch because it's strong enough for this. Transmission is a, what do they call it, a T56 Magnum. It's basically the T6060, but in an aftermarket case. It's in the casing from an F-body, a fourth generation Camaro, say a 98 Camaro or so. Rear end is Cadillac CTS-V Getrag rear end, and this has got the G3 kit, which basically means big fat half shafts, big fat and uprated rear drive shafts. Cooling, or the fuel system is just the Flyin Miata, basically big fuel kit. It's all the stuff that Flyin Miata sells. Flyin Miata sells a lot of it in part because of what we've learned to develop in this car. This car, for example, the exhaust brace that holds the two halves of the exhaust near the rear of the transmission, I've broken something like 4 or 5 different designs of those. I keep breaking them. We redesign it. We come up with a stronger version. That one lasts a little bit longer. I break that one. So this car is responsible for the fact that the current ones don't break at all. Current weight is, I think it's 2,300 pounds right now, wet. That's as it sits, ready to go. That varies a little bit depending on what I've got bolted on it right now. You know, this suspension's a little bit lighter than some of the suspension I've used in the past, but these wheels might not be the same weight. You know, but it's in that roughly that range. We get a lot of questions about how to hook it up, what it's like to drive one of these things, and it drives just like a Miata. It's still got that same friendly sort of feel. The difference is the accelerator pedal works extremely well. You know, this thing, when it came from the factory, 128 horsepower. Now it's got, you know, at the crankshaft, you know, it's 480, 490, 500, something like that. It's considerably more, but it still has that fundamental goodness. I get a lot of questions about how it must be uncontrollable, how it doesn't hook up, and the trick is, it's got all that torque, a big flat torque curve, and it's very easy to control. There's no spikes in the torque curve. It doesn't jump up and bite you, so you can very easily meter the power out. So when you come off a corner, say come off turn 2 at Laguna Seca, you don't just slam the throttle to the floor and leave it there. You roll in. You might only take 3/4 of a second to get to full throttle, but it's enough to let those rear wheels keep about a 10% slip and just boom, get the car going. Once you're in 3rd gear, 4th gear, you know, it hooks up quite well. So basically, they're very, very friendly. They're very predictable. If you ask it to do something stupid, it will do something stupid. But it won't do something stupid without you asking it to. So if you jump in one of these things and try to drive it like a 1.6 Miata, foot to the floor everywhere, don't really use the brakes, you're going to have a big accident. If you get in it and drive it like it is a high power to weight ratio car, you keep your brain and you roll into the throttle, don't just slam it open every time you will find that it actually hooks up amazingly well. You get those rear wheels slightly over rotating. My friends and I call it the smear button, and you can just walk the back end around coming out of a corner, leave black stripes behind you, but still hooking up well. It's a very good tool. You can do whatever you want to with this thing. That's one of the beauties of the V8 cars. I'm jumping around. I obviously don't have a script. Here's some of the specific rally stuff that we use. Just looking to see if I have any other questions I missed. Oh, the FX1 Pro is a Corbeau, not a Sparco. That is correct. If I said it was a Sparco, I apologize. We do tend to use Sparco seats in most of them, but... See, Darren Shepard is running. I think Darren Shepard, that sounds like the guy who's a registrar for Targa Newfoundland. Hello, Darren. Here is some of the stuff that we use on the stage. This is an important one. This is an intercom. You have separate levels for the driver and the co-driver. We can bring in an external output, such as, say, a phone, so we can make phone calls. We have an outlet, too, so we can patch it into the camera so you can hear what's going on. Good communication between driver and passenger is critical on rally, as you can imagine. If the driver doesn't know what's coming up, then you're going to have an accident. Or you're going to be slow, one or the other. Both are pretty bad. So I have I use a special helmet, or on stage we use special helmets from Peltor that actually have built-in intercom systems. Very good sound deadening. It's getting a little old. This one's more or less retired now. But if you watch Top Gear, you'll see the guys use these when they're narrating in the car because they've got a very good microphone. You can hear what's going on very well, and that sound deadening keeps you from getting tired on the long stages. You know, constant noise will make you really, really tired. When we're on the on transit stages, we have these intercoms that we can wear and talk to each other without needing helmets. We also saw the rally computer back there. Oh, and here's kind of a fun thing. These are the bolts that hold on the hardtop. I mentioned I used colored bolts for everything. You can see the red ones go on the right, the blue ones go on the left. It's one of those little in-jokes I do for myself. It amuses myself, but that's okay. So if you have any more questions about this car, I'm just going to check my notes here and see what I might have missed. Throw them in the comments. I will do my best to answer them live. Questions about the tire setups. Yes. I get a lot of questions why I run a square setup, why I don't run fatter tires on the back. And that's because I want this car to turn. You run fat tires on the back, you're giving yourself asymmetrical grip. And because this is a Miata, I still want it to turn and not just live my life a quarter mile at a time. I do run the same size tires front and rear. We can run 245s in these things without too much effort. This particular car I run 225s. It might actually be on 245s today when I think about it. But I have found that a good, like a Toyota RR or a sticky 225 will give me the grip I need to really make this thing work on track. David McLaughlin says it needs slow car fast stickers. Well, I don't know if he needs one or if I need one, but I think I've got it covered. Slow Car Fast is my own personal website, by the way, slowcarfast.com. Because I have a lot of slow cars that are fun to drive fast, but this is perhaps another side of the coin. It is a slow car that has become fast. One thing about this car, as you will notice, it's got some patina. This hole, for example, that's where the canards sit when it's in track mode. It's got some canards in there. It's got a 3-inch splitter. It's got a flat under tray. All sorts of stuff that is currently disabled because, well, it's in street mode. Those who have a sharp eye will notice that this NACA duct doesn't actually feed anything right now. When it ran the Targa in 2011, there was an intake right here. It wasn't a great place for an intake. It's before we developed the LS7 intake, but it did use this for cool, fresh air. Since then, it doesn't really need that because it has the LS7 intake, but that has the car is best known, so I've left it in place. It is blocked off. When the hood's closed, there's a plate comes down and keeps that from actually doing anything, so it's purely visual now, but it was functional at one time. You can see it's also running some Singular Motorsports hood louvers. They are in non-standard places because this car has been through several generations of hood louvers, and this poor hood is Swiss cheese underneath. As you can see, it has had multiple things done to it over the years. It needs 4 hood pins because otherwise it will actually flex at speed and lift up at the front and look very alarming. So this is what happens when you develop a car over years instead of just building it once and never having to touch it again. You end up with these weird evolutions, extra hood pins that you wouldn't otherwise need. There's a number of things on this car. Oh, here's a fun little touch. This is a master cylinder, a 1-inch master cylinder off a 929. Straight bolt in if you have the right bits and pieces. That is the booster off a Mazda Speed, and they just bolt in, gives you really nice pedal pressure. And also it has, as you can see, it's got one of Flyin Miata's master cylinder braces. So when you're humping down the main straight and you've got 450 plus horsepower pounding you down there, it's important to have a nice confident feel in your brake pedal. So that's what's going on there. These other hoses that are down beside it, that is a bleeder for the clutch. That's a V8 thing. The slave cylinder on these things is inside the tunnel. Obviously they can't be bled normally, so that is a clutch bleeder. So there you go. It's a bit of an oddball of a car because of its history. You know, most track cars don't have skid plates. Most rally cars don't have wings and big splitters in the front because they'd rip the splitters off. Most street cars don't have a cage. The cage itself is an older Hard Dog unit. Hard Dog provided that for us for the event. It's been modified over the years for the various requirements for Targa Newfoundland. It's a little outdated these days. I may cut the front part of it off and rebuild it. In the meantime, I might go full street mode and just cut off the front half because driving a cage on the street is not the best idea. This car evolves. You know, it's been in the family. It's been in my garage for 14 years now, so I will continue to modify it as I come up with things to do to it. So let me check my list of questions one more time. While I'm doing that, I'll turn this on and let it idle for you so you can hear it go whoomp, 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 just because everyone loves whoomp, whoomp, whoomp. Everyone always wants to hear it. Every time someone comes for a tour at the Flyin Miata shop, they always want to hear one of the NDs or this car up and running. Let's do this again. Again, make sure it's in neutral. I don't want to end up on America's Funniest Home Videos here. Seems just like a normal street car. How they can stalk me out. In case you're wondering, I did warm the car up before the video because I knew this was going to happen, so I am not abusing a cold engine there. Don't worry. One question we've had, and this is a good one, is how does this compare to driving the ND V8, which is parked just on the side of this wall right now? They're very, very similar. Indy, our V8 car that have been in all the magazines, you've seen it in Road and Track and Top Gear magazine and Car and Driver and all over the place. Actually has this same engine. It has almost exactly the same drivetrain. It weighs a little bit more because it is a street car and has heated leather seats and all the mod cons. It's 2,600 pounds, about 300 pounds heavier. But it's amazing how similar they feel. The ND V8 Indy feels more like this car than any other V8 cars that we've built. It's got that same rabid enthusiasm that this car does, but also the same playfulness. When I first took the ND car out on our local track, which is actually a go-kart track for road testing, I was doing the same tricks I do with this one. I was sliding it around in the corners in the same places right out of the box because it felt so familiar, so comfortable. In a straight-up race, I gotta tell you, the ND chassis is good. It's really good. I haven't done any timed runs one against the other, partly because this is a caged race car with skid plates and things all over the place. You can go a little closer to the edge than you do in a street car that's got a 3-point seat belt and leather seats. So I'll admit that I have never pushed the ND quite as far for as long as I have this one, but I have a feeling they'd be awfully close. And if you did this sort of conversion to an ND V8, it would be a beast. It would be considerably faster than this car would be likely. This car's 26 years old. That's fair enough. That extra suspension travel we have in the ND, the ability to carry 245s without any real modification, and just the fundamental goodness of the chassis, it's a very, very good car. This one still, when I get in it though, it's like coming home. This has been my office for a decade and a half, and this car will not surprise me. I get in it, it's like, oh, it's my old friend again. We're just going to go have some fun. So, yeah, they're similar. In a straight-up track competition, I think this one would probably still have an edge because it is a fully prepped track car. But if they were prepped to the same level, then I don't think this one would be able to keep up. Let me check my question list one more time. I'll let you look at the car while I'm doing that. one question: did I upgrade the brake hard lines? And the answer is no. I didn't upgrade the brake hard lines. I'm not sure why, but or why I would. But the brake hard lines have been modified slightly to allow for the different master cylinder. I just had to change some of the plumbing, but fundamentally it is the same. Would I rather have a V8 NC or V8 ND from Ken Tully? Ken, there is actually, not everyone at Flyin Miata agrees with this. I personally really like the ND. It reminds me of this car. It's small, nimble, enthusiastic, light. The NC is a little more of a grand tour. I know that Jeremy, for example, he likes the NC platform for the V8 conversions. He likes the more grand touring aspect of it. So it's not an answer with a single right question. I personally like the ND, but that is not universal at Flyin Miata. Okay, and Axel Vindmuller, he has been in this car on the track. I think he's driven it as a 4-cylinder. I did have trouble getting the hardtop off when he was there too. He's a he's the sort of guy that likes his hardtop, likes the car as a convertible. For those of you who are looking for used parts from Flyin Miata, we don't sell used parts. Everybody at Flyin Miata wants hardtops just as much as our customers do, so there are unfortunately no spares sitting around gathering dust. We hang on to those. This particular hardtop came off a black 1990 Miata that was just hammered. It had been dropped. There was no rear window. I don't think you can see it. It's got stress marks all over the place. It holds together. It does the job just fine, which in this case is keeping the rain off, keeping the wind off, but it certainly was no pristine cream puff to start off with. Here, I'll show you one kind of fun thing, actually. Let me put this down. I'm just going on and on and on. You guys are still watching, so I'll keep talking. I can tell you, doing hood pins or using pins for your trunk lid, it might seem like a good idea. It's not really very functional. It's a pain in the butt to take on and off. Every time you open the trunk, you need a place to find it, or find a place to put it. And they're always hard to align. But if you want a minimum weight trunk lid, this is how you do it. So you can probably see this is fine. This was actually me testing colors. This was a color set for the Martini that I got off, I forget where it came off, but someone said, oh, there's a Lamborghini orange that works. That's sort of thing. It doesn't. You can tell those aren't right. These are the real colors, and these were really literally done with me basically taking my finger, putting them in the paint, and I might have used a brush on this one, but if I ever write this car off, I'm hanging this on the wall just because it's cool. But this is how you make a minimum weight trunk lid. You can actually go a little bit lighter if you cut out further, but I wanted to keep the gasket because this had to be weatherproof. When I was racing in the Targa, this thing would have tools in it. It had a full-size spare. And it rains in Newfoundland. We raced in a literal hurricane. So this car, it maintains its gasket. Let's see what's in the trunk. I don't think there's anything too exciting in there. Camera work. Fantastic camera work. Yeah, there's a battery. It's a PC 925 to run the thing. This is to hold down the spare tire. When the spare is in there, it clamps on kind of like it does from the factory. These are for holding down some various tools and spare parts. We did have a thing of, I think it was motor oil, broke during one of the stages and left goo all over the inside of the trunk, which is why it's disgusting in here, but that's what's going on. These are for, well, they're strapped in. These little guys are for the active aero, and for foreshadowing, I will do a Facebook Live on the active aero experiments in this car in 2 weeks. Next week we have a new product for you, but in 2 weeks we will show off some of the stuff I played around with. These are riv nuts. They are for the wing mounts. This was the first car that Flyin Miata put a Carve Tomorrow wing on, and these are the mounts for it. Makes it easy to swap it out, to put different mounts on. I've got 3 different mounts for the thing, and of course in street car mode I run without it. Whee! So I'll answer one more question from Scott before I fire this thing up one more time. Answer one more question before I fire it up one more time, and that is, any plans to go back to Targa Newfoundland? And the answer is, I would love to. In 2005, we were this close. Mazda was going to give us one of the Global Cup car prototypes. You saw those cars everywhere. They were the red with little stripes down the, kind of like martini stripes. We were going to have one of those. Long Road Racing was going to support it. But unfortunately, 3 weeks before the event, the lawyers heard about it, said, good Lord, that's a prototype car in another country on public roads. No way. And the organizers of the Targa Newfoundland had ways to deal with that. We had answers that they didn't ask for, but unfortunately, Mazda's corporate lawyers kiboshed that one, which is a real shame because it would have been probably the competition debut of the ND. However, those cars didn't have roofs and it rained like crazy that year, so I'm a little bit glad it didn't work out. I don't know if I'll get back to Targa myself. It is a very high effort event to run. The first time we ran it, it was totally a bucket list thing. The second time we ran it was just, let's see if we can make this happen. We got lucky, we did. This car was partly a result. But it involves, I have to be away from home for a full month. My wife has to live with me being obsessed with Targa for 9-10 months before that. It becomes all consuming, and there's just other stuff we want to do. We want to keep, developing the ND V8, for example, or getting around to different events with Flyin Miata. We're going to be at Road Atlanta for the Miata reunion in October, for example. That doesn't leave much room for doing the Targa Newfoundland, so it's unlikely that I will be back. I'm a big supporter of the event. I love the event, but personally, it's time to pass the torch on to somebody else. So I still develop this car as if I was going back, and I could probably jump in this thing and take it to the start line of the race with a weekend's worth of wrenching. And I take a certain amount of comfort in that, the fact that I know that I could get back out there if I had to, but unfortunately, it's just not liable to happen. This car is more of a historical artifact in that regard than it is a living, breathing competition car. Now it's a crazy street car. It is a development platform. It is a rolling science experiment, but it is not currently a competition car. So, sorry, Scott. I know you and a bunch of other people want to see this thing back at Targa, but at the moment, that's just not happening. So I will do one more last check to see if I have more questions, and then you poor people have been listening to this for over 45 minutes, so I think I might let you go. Let's see if anything else has come up. I've had at least 3 questions if we're going back to Targa Newfoundland, so you might have to rewind a little bit, but unfortunately, no, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Okay, so I do have some last-minute information. This is good information. I'm going to get in front of the camera for this again. Whoop. This just in, breaking news from Bill Cardell, the owner at Flyin Miata, just sent me an email saying, yes, we have come up with enough protection, enough procedures to keep our shipping staff safe. They're comfortable with it. We're happy with it. So we will begin shipping parts again on Monday. So Flyin Miata's warehouse will be opening again. Parts will start streaming out the door on Monday. That's great news. We've been working with our shipping guys to make sure that they are safe, because obviously with our shipping people we don't get parts out the door, and so we need to take care of our shipping people. We are still, of course, answering tech questions. We're still doing product development. Our 3D printed parts have been very, very popular. Our carbon reinforced nylon. We have actually converted about a third of our printers over to printing medical equipment. We're printing some mask parts for the local hospital. So hopefully you understand that it might take us a little longer to get some of the 3D parts back in stock, but we turned over part of that print bank for people who need it more than we do. As much fun as Miata toys are, there's more important stuff going on out there right now. So that, I'm going to call that, conclude this. We are going to put this video up on YouTube. It'll be on Facebook, of course. Ask any more questions, we will answer those questions. We'll try to get you some more footage on this car. I'll be back next week talking about some new products. If you do want to see this car going full throttle on public roads, go on YouTube and look for Racing the Rock. 7 Days at Targa Newfoundland, I think, is the subtitle. But Racing the Rock is a full-on movie of us racing this thing in 2011. It's about 90 minutes long, put together by Adam Costa and friends, a professional producer and editor, and it is a fantastic video to watch, fantastic show to watch while you're stuck at home with nothing to do when you're tired of watching Netflix reruns and tigers. I don't know what's going on with the tigers. But Racing the Rock, it's a great watch, a lot of fun. There is a lot more drama in that than we expected it to be. We accidentally gave them some very, very good stuff to film. But if you enjoy this car, you want to hear it full throttle, in car, we've got stuff on the roof, we've got shots from behind, we've got shots from the side of the road. It does a really good job of capturing the speed and ferocity of this particular beast when it's let off the leash. So that's it. My name's Keith Tanner. I'm here from Flyin Miata. Thanks for following along. Thanks for being so patient. And we will see you next week, Thursday at 2 o'clock. Have a good one.